name is Lynn Miller, and you are listening to 50 Shades of Business. I am the CEO and founder of Growth Stage Tech. This is probably as exciting as all the other shows have been. This is probably the most exciting show we've done so far, because my friend, Marty Constant, today is going to be launching her book, Activate Your Agile Career. Right. So I'm going to introduce our guests today because they all know each other and they've worked together before. The name of this episode is Activate Your Feedback Squad. And the reason that we think that's so important for entrepreneurs is nobody does it alone. And for Growth Stage Tech, it's really important to us that people are making connections, that they are collaborating, and they are focused on their customers, and sometimes focused on customers together. We even have cooperation with corporations. And with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists for today. It's like history is repeating itself in some ways. So first of all, Marty Constant is of Activate Your Agile Career, and also the owner of, and an entrepreneur, a business owner, many times over, a consultant, and now an author. And I'm so proud to have you on this show. Right next to her on the left is Bill Furlong. Bill is a serial entrepreneur. You have been a mentor. You have been a business owner and a lot of other things, which I'll give you a chance to talk about in a second. And Melissa Wilson, who is an author and an author's author, mentor, a consultant, and the owner of networlding.com, a lot of best-selling books, if I'm not mistaken. And I knew Melissa when I was just like a baby in the business world. She was the beginning of me learning about networking. So let's get started. Marty, what would you like to tell us about Agile Career? How did you come up with this?
Is patterning what I've learned in my profession, and it's around this topic of agility. Observing in the technology space that I worked in is that the engineers that were developing products and ideas in a certain way that made it more efficient to launch and get feedback ended up being a part of a group of global marketers. A few years later, in 2012, we applied some of these same principles. Agile marketing. I'll give you an example of agile marketing. We used to do marketing in a cave by ourselves, and then we, in agency world, and then we come to our clients and we have this big reveal. Do you remember Mad Men? It would happen, and you might have a hit rate of 50% if you were lucky. Realized is that and software development has to be a much more collaborative environment to succeed. And I took some of the principles that we worked on as a global team of marketers. I applied some of those very same principles to the management of one's own career, pursuing things in parallel instead of just focusing on one thing so that you can ensure your relevance in the career game. So those are just a few things of why in agility, which became a research project, 120 interviews. I commissioned some research, and it's been the result of a 4-year journey, and it'll be launching in March.
It's launching in March. Okay. So somewhere in the middle of the show, we're going to give people some information about where they can log into your website and become part of your community, because we all believe in communities, if I'm not mistaken. So Bill.
Here.
Thank you. Welcome. I wanted to, first of all, find out how you and Marty, her of hers, or how did that work?
Wow. It's a great story.
Don't go too far back.
Okay. No, we actually we have moved into same career circles. I've been as you said, a serial entrepreneur involved in the local marketing and media community. I worked for Cranes for many years before I started my career. And one of my clients was a London-based publisher called B2B Marketing, and we had her speak at one of our events locally, and that's how we reconnected. We go way back, but we actually grew up on the South Side, mutual friends, and so it was great to reconnect and get caught up on the many years we've missed. And I currently a company, our last company called Bizo, B-I-Z-O. I was a founding partner of. We were fortunate enough to be acquired by LinkedIn.
Okay.
Allowed me to take a little time off. I do mentoring both at 1871 and a few other local incubators, one of them called Junto Institute, which is led by the former DePaul Dean of Entrepreneurial Studies. And as all entrepreneurs, you can only sit out so long. So I started another one. And so we're activated and commercialized. And thanks for having me here today.
The name of this new company is?
Yes, the name of the new company is called SquareStack.
SquareStack.
And we call ourselves a business apps management platform. So all of us in the previous show as well, we're all running small businesses and we need software to do it. So everything from your QuickBooks to your CRM, your Facebook account, your supply chain software, we've built a way where you can access it in one single point of entry. Through a subscription fee, you can manage all your technology. So we're pretty excited.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
There's a couple of those on the market, but scaling is our big topic, and we're going to get into that a little bit later today.
Great.
Melissa, you.
Good. Thanks
Good.
for having me here.
Thanks for coming. And I just would like to know a little bit about how you and Marty connected, because this book.
Marty and I go back to Closer Look, right?
Right.
And just knowing her from that point,
It's Dave Ormisher's?
Dave Ormisher.
Yes, right, okay.
Just wonderful insights, always upbeat, very generous with her time and thoughts. And through the years, she has taken the time to reach out and connect and make powerful requests for support. I can't imagine anyone not wanting to do everything they can for her because she's a gem. She's brilliant. That's what I think of her. And being the publisher, that's a true honor. I only take on thought leaders who make a difference in the world. And the reason I do that is I think that's the most agile thing we can do in a world that's fraught with all kinds of issues. And those of us who get that you can do well by doing good, people, I think, really, they're the ones I want to support. And I'm very happy that, and I appreciate, Lynn, you saying the author's author. I found more so than being my own author, I love helping other authors now. And it's satisfaction of being that mentor to the authors that I think makes my life really fun every day.
Thank you. Well, we could probably do a show on each one of you today, in the future, because I know you bring a world of experience about the world of networking and careers. But I'm really interested, Marty, in activating your Agile career. And it's Agile and it's a career. And frankly, I just finished a few chapters of the book and said, the entrepreneur needs. Because it's part of the way you can really identify what your what kind of business you're going to sustain in the world, the way to do it is based on what you're passionate about and what calls to you. You discovered in all of this research around this, because you interviewed lots of entrepreneurs.
That's right. Entrepreneurs, I interviewed a neurosurgeon, I interviewed marketers, all different kinds of people, senior VPs of major technology companies, and I've interviewed people that have worked in the teaching profession, a little bit from all of them. And one of the things that has driven all of this, Lynn, is think about things, events like global financial crises. Think about the rate at which technology is changing. My overarching business is constant change. It's a play on my last name, but the reason I chose it way back in the year 2000 was I noticed that the only way to stay relevant in today's workplace or yesterday's workplace was to keep current to change. So respond to change is one of the pivotal in any agile methods, whether it be software or marketing or careers. And that if you are not responding to change, left. And one of the reasons I wrote this book is to who are navigating change and help them lean into change rather than deny it. You can adapt to change or you can deny change and run away from it. And the assumption is that people who are with skills, things like that, they are going to have the roles in the future, and the people that are staying put. There's a guy named Salim Ismail. He talks about the half-life 20 years ago, the half-life of education, that it outlives its usefulness, used to be about 20 years. We could get a degree or we could get some kind of training and it would last us 20 years. Now the half-life of education is less than 5 years. There's some suggestion that our institutions that are teaching us have to create shorter, more compressed programs, and then we jump into the continual after the formal learning.
Less than 5 years. That makes a 4-year college getting very interesting now, right?
1 year shelf life.
True. The shelf life is, why do we have all of these education companies?
That's right.
That are thriving right now? Why do we have massive open online coursework available to us? Why do we have all of these workshops that entrepreneurs are putting out there? This is the new world. This is continuous learning, getting trained, and working in a career.
So continuous learning and continuous, because it's really iterative. That's why they have the leading startup. So Bill, what is it that you've learned about having an Agile career that's been really valuable?
When we got back together, it was like, of course, Agile. I mean, the last few companies I've been a founder or co-founder of, I mean, every hire we make, every project we embrace is built in the Agile philosophy. So his own career just makes total sense. And I can tell you as someone who hires a lot and fires I suppose, it's because you're not looking at where someone went to school. You're not looking at who someone knows, unless they're in some sort of client or sales position. But what are their skill sets? What software are they able to run? So that's almost like a prerequisite before you even talk to someone. So this idea of whether you're young or old to manage your career in an agile manner makes complete sense. And I get a lot of calls from peers, in the second half of their careers, or the back nine, as I call it.
Back nine, yes.
I just say, listen, pick up this book when it's ready, because it is indeed about, you can't look up a job and apply for it. You have to create your own career. You have to understand that this world is about what I just said. And a lot of folks just don't understand that they go about the old legacy route of trying to find a new job, or try to pigeonhole, cram themselves into a position that they know they're, quite frankly, not qualified for. So that would be everything we've done in our startup is agile. We with Marty, we created our platform with small business owners, engaged and giving us feedback every step of the way. And we didn't launch commercially until we got through all that agile development. And even when we launched, we still have our channel partners, as we call our distributors, let us have access to their members, their users, to give us more feedback, because the job is never done. It's sort of a closing comment. The job is never done. To be committed to agile.
So when I come back around, we're going to talk. That's a great component of the feedback squad, because you created your customers as your feedback squad.
Yes.
So we're going to get back to that
Correct.
in just a second. I definitely want to continue that. And Melissa, but we're going to start the conversation about the feedback squad with Melissa, because I'm curious about when you are working with the thought leaders on a book. It's been a lifetime of work in a specific area that they've studied. I know that is for me in the world of learning. It is for Marty in the world of marketing, and she's just used everything to add it to the career. So how does that work for you when you're working with authors?
I absolutely love the process. So it's usually 4 months with conversations every week, and getting insights from them about the nuances, those inflection points, if you will, those strategic points that really made a difference, and to do differently than a lot of others in my field that are helping with ghostwriting or development of a book, is I'll spend at least 3 weeks doing the research on the book. So it's a complement to the marketplace, because it's so important to not have, if you will, a Me Too book. Marty had shared with me what she was coming out with. Research, I really saw that there's a gap in the marketplace. There's an opportunity here. And so with any thought leader, it's a matter of making sure that when they're thinking about whatever their thought leadership is about, they shouldn't look at it as basically saying the same thing. So they do have to be agile in that regard. Another thing that Marty did that is so above and beyond what many authors don't do is to commission research, to really have that extensive, those extensive insights that they extrapolate and utilize, so that people get a much better idea of what that could mean to them, for them. Quick example is I was doing a book for somebody who's now the president of Holland Cruise Lines, and we did a book on talentism in the year 2025. He took the book to Davos to present it around leadership, and certainly it showed that the millennials are going to be the dominant players in the workforce at that time. The interesting thing was being able to have the whole team at Mercer, where he was the head of HR at that point, pulling in all this research. So there was a lot of information that was put together and then shared that really I don't see aggregated any other place. So I think those are the interesting points. You've got to be different, and you've got to also figure out the niche, because it is about a niche, but Shark Tank. You don't want a niche that's too small, and you've got to be careful. So it takes some speeding up when it comes to thought leadership.
Slowing down to speeding up when it comes to thought leadership.
Right. So you're going to slow down and not be reactive, but being proactive and look at the broad landscape, look at what's out there. Most people don't know with books that, and you'll understand when I say this, Amazon is its own search engine. There's also another site that I utilize, NetGalley, that has previews of books that are coming out. And so you want to look at both of those and really understand where you should put yourself so that you're unique, so that you stand out. So what I like about this book is it's talking about agility, which is a hot area. And it also has nice graphics that Marty was showing me before we came here. She was very, very clever.
Are they agile?
I think they are. I said, who did those for you? Because another thing that's really fun to do, and one of my authors actually turned me on to this to do when you're writing a book, is to look at all the infographics. And, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So it's a really great tool to kind of find your place out there as to how to be different.
Right. I'm interested in the feedback. What kind of feedback have you given? Like, you don't have to tell us everything, but, what kind of feedback process in terms of directing her?
Well, and that's a very good question, because there's so many different aspects to publishing that people don't understand. So one of the things is they make the mistake of thinking they have to do a couple things, and it's a very integrated approach. So we did have a discussion about, I would say, design, and I know, Marty, you want to. More because I gave it to you. I almost channel things when we're talking.
That's great.
If we go back, I mentioned it was a 4-year project, but a little over 4 years ago, Melissa is a very generous person. She's probably mentored and given feedback to more even on the clock. But one of the things she did was she ran an opportunity for about 3 or 4 of us, project that we didn't know exactly was going to be a book. It goes back 4.5 years ago. One of them was a couple novelists, and I was a business book. And she helped us understand the level of research one has to do to understand your space. Because Amazon was different then than it is now. But she gave examples, and she gave us homework. It was a lot of stuff, and we were all sharing this information on Google Docs with each other, even though some of them were personal stories, some of them were more novel time. And at that time, it might have been 5 years ago, I knew I wasn't ready, and I knew writing a bit. And so that's really where it all started. And just to add a little bit more, Melissa, we actually met prior to that. I actually met Melissa. She was on the stage. One of these tech things. It was financial tech, and there was another writer. There was somebody from Fast Company was on the panel, and she was either on the way to publishing Networlding, which is her signature area, but she published things like Angels in the Workplace. She published things, she wrote these books. Angels in the Workplace, she published a book on partnership. So the importance of partnership alone. So she interviewed a lot of people in that. And I think it's 15 books right now that you've written, co-authored, maybe more than that. That whole concept of feedback while they've hired her in very much of a generosity place of herself. I know a half a dozen people that feedback to people we both know, and it might just be situational, but makes a huge difference. And it's why you are also, you give, Dave Warmisher used to say
Yes.
this, give to get. Matter of asking and getting
Pay
all the
for it.
time. It's giving to get. And I think Melissa has always had that.
And I would say there are other people out there like myself that I don't know if you know this, but Starbucks just partnered with LinkedIn, or LinkedIn partnered with Starbucks to do mentoring. And it looks like they're focused on the, disadvantaged communities right now, which they should be. One was too far away for me, but I try to mentor about 10 people a year. So just thoughtfully, and I get interns from a place called Dream Careers every summer that come and I teach them publishing and social media. But to me, it's so rewarding, and my passion is helping young people get better starts in life anyway.
If I may add, accelerators, one's called Junto Institute, and one's a global group called Founder Institute.
Yep.
They have groups all over the world. And we just finished our recruiting for, and part of is us mentors sharing why we want to be mentors. And guess what? One of the major benefits of being a mentor is you're getting back. Really expect that. I've had mentors, and I still have a few mentors. But when you're mentoring, in my opinion, getting a lot of on running your own business. So that give to get back is real time. It's agile. So it's happening in real time, and surprisingly so. I thought I'd share that.
Absolutely. And I wanted to also acknowledge that this is you're on IntellectualRadio.com, and we're being sponsored by Scene Chicago and My Chocolate Soul. So we'll say that one more time. But for the listeners, before we go on to the next topic, what way for them to become part of the community? How do they?
Well, initially it's signing up for communication at agilecareer.com. There's lots of free and helpful tools on the site right now. There's a career guide, and there's lots of resources that are listed on the site so that people can just gather all this information themselves.
That's great. And there's an idea section on there for people to contribute ideas, or are they your ideas?
I actually call the blog the Idea Zone. And the reason it's the Idea Zone, I really, as time goes on, I just launched this right in December. And the idea is to have more people contributing to it. But it's where you go to get fresh perspectives on his own career. It could be a life issue, because I came to learn that an agile mindset works in your personal and professional life. So it's about stories.
Stories, another great topic.
Storytelling.
Yes. So you're at the Junto Institute still,
Yes.
correct? And you're also part of Founders Institute. What would you say is the difference between them?
Well,
the community?
the very sort of literal difference is that it's about companies who have revenue. They've been funded Series A or Series B, venture funded, and have a pretty solid management team in place. So that whole team gets the mentoring. Founder Institute is about very, very early stage, where you are probably working already in your career, and you have an idea that you want to turn into a business. So you enter the program at Founder Institute to really, if you have the DNA to be an entrepreneur, and then this vet your business concept into a pitchable form. Is it a real idea? So on and so forth. So those are the two sort of differences. But as far as the role as a mentor, they're pretty much the same. Just share your experiences, negative, positive, your successes, the things you figured out along the way. And certainly starting my first company in 2000 here in Chicago, a digital media company, there weren't these resources. So if I may say, our city's come a way in terms of networking, and you know that. You and I have been tracking this along the same way. So it's really, in your show, a great place to do this sort of peer.
Peer groups are really important.
Yes.
We had in our program last week, we had Todd Smart of.
Yes.
And
I know
he,
Todd.
right.
Yeah.
So you know that he's just done a tremendous job with
Right.
Traction Center in Chicago,
Mhm.
and the people that were there were so hungry for more. It was really he never actually got to leave until the place was empty. It was They were so excited. So feedback squad. Is there certain people, like a close circle? That's really what's been advised to me.
Yes. Well, I've had a career coach for 20 years.
Okay.
I was a CEO of a venture-funded company, and that's when and so he's a former IBM enterprise senior director, and we get together a few times a year. If I'm in a pinch, I'll just call 1-800-DAVE, and he'll respond. But having a career coach is front and center. I have a few good friends, business in the technology ad tech space, which I'm of for 15 years. They've raised money, they've sold companies, they have failed, they've succeeded. So a few of them informally, and just check in on our status of our current companies. Certainly I have spiritual and sort of personal advisors, pastor to an uncle who's a politician, and I'd have to edit his advice. But then, as I said before, being part of these groups, I have fellow mentors alongside me. And actually, one of my fellow mentors at Junto is now part of our Square Stack. He's our UI UX director. And so I would never have met him if it wasn't for being in that place, being a fellow mentor.
Right. Melissa, who is your feedback squad? How have you put together yours?
I had the good fortune of, I was doing writers' workshops when I made my transition, seeing that time when at one point I was named Best Networker in Chicago by Cranes.
All right, yeah.
But then I saw the world changing with social media. I was one of the first people on LinkedIn. I got to present to them. I got to work with the leaders at Twitter. But I saw the change coming, and it was time for me to reinvent myself. So I thought about it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to help authors now, which was a good time to get out, because pretty soon everybody and their brother was a networking expert. And so when I turned the corner, there was an individual, and this is a book that came out this year, last year, Making Your Network. And I had a contest because one year Regis, the shared office space, gave me a center with 8 seats in it when I marketed for them, but I got to do all this small business mentoring there. And so I did a contest for the best networkers in the world. And that brought in a guy named Billy Dexter. And
Not Billy Deck.
Not Billy Deck,
right.
But Billy Deck, he keeps saying, I'm going to write my book. And I keep saying, okay,
right.
well, come on. But he's the restaurateur who's very good. And so when you see him again, tell him
I will.
So many people
Do I get
tell
a commission?
him that. Yes,
Okay,
we do.
great.
There's
Okay,
always
great.
a commission. So Billy Dexter is a partner at Heidrick. And the cool thing about that book was it took 14 years for that book to come around, because he had come to a writer's workshop way back or the contest was in 2002. And then in 2007, he was in the writer's workshop. 7 years later, he figured out the book. So I actually had to go to the Willis Tower, because if I didn't, he would be not focused. He would not be focused. And it was like crossfire for 2 years, went back and forth, and we shared the best of our networking strategies. And he really is the best I've ever seen. So, is this really special book that tells our stories, our personal stories through challenges, and his growing up during the Detroit riots and being the first person in his family to go to college and then get inducted into his Hall of Fame later. So Billy's this guy that I actually created a new networking concept for here, because what I found through all the research is that you can network. And then I put mentoring at the next level. And then I looked at the next level, then I would say, is sponsorship. There's a great book out by a woman that says, hey, women don't get sponsored, which I did find out. They don't get sponsored in any way, shape, or form the way men do. Mm-hmm. Another level needed to be put in there, because Billy does this. He has what I call connection hubs. So he's on the board at the Goodman Theater. He's on the board over at Chicago United. He's on the board at the Metropolitan Club. But the most important club he's part of is called ELC, which is the Executive Leadership Club for People of Color. And while he was at Hydrix, still there, he started going to their events and buying the $50,000 table. He eventually got into ELC. Then he brings people with him. Another interesting piece is how people bring each other along. And I do find that men do this so much more than women do it.
They are great at it.
They are so good. And the African American male network is amazing. And I have at least 15 African American male authors, and they just keep coming. And Billy refers them, but he's the kind of guy that does it the right way. He says he'll stop you in the middle of the golf course if you're saying, hey, I think I should write a book. And he goes, okay, stop. You better be ready. You better do your homework. You better. That's so good. Very few people go to that length, and there's probably 1%. So I was so honored to spend 2 years with, going over and over and over his methodology, and basically rewrote the book 3 times before it came out. So that book is a real special book that I think people can use to get, well, how do I do this, when it truly is 80% or more of the way people get jobs. But I would also contend that it's the way people get jobs, the way they keep jobs, the way they get promoted in jobs, the way they build out sales networks. Mm-hmm. Very, very powerful that way. Mm-hmm. So that, having, to me, if you have someone in your network, in your close circle, that's very powerful around networking, that would be one of the best mentors.
It's really the way has been, formed. It's really formed so that everybody's network, and it's networking conversations. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and Lynn, I will add one more thing. It's just, to me, not counterintuitive, and I don't know why people don't get it, but imagine 10 people, and I always say imagine Oprah.
That was my next point.
Imagine 10 people. I call it the power of 10 circle. Mm-hmm. And if they're all giving to each other, if you will, time, treasures, talents, and thoughts, and waxing spiritual from the last group here, but if they're all giving, everybody's receiving. I understand why people don't get that yet, because that's where it gets fun. Nobody suffers, nobody goes without, everybody gives, everybody gets.
Well, that's generosity. I mean, generosity is really critical in activating your career and in activating your business. If sharing the idea, this concern that somebody's going to take it away is a problem.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, Marty, when you with the Agile Careers book, as you were just researching, were there any patterns for the in terms of the way people activated their feedback squads? Who was included?
Well, there's all different things, and something that Melissa and I talked about on the way over here was this power of, she just mentioned that when people get together, whether it be groups of 10 or, different distributed networks, other up.
Yep.
A mastermind group is just one area that you could work on that would be part mentorship, part encouragement, part accountability. It's those kinds of networks that really help people succeed. So you're dealing with people that are active and engaged to begin with, that want to grow, that are growing. When you get involved with a group like that, and it could be a group on, how Oprah says, living your best life. Melissa mentioned something earlier about, what I knew when I was 10 years old. I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So that's some of her ideas. If you get a group of people together on this topic that are interested and engaged, it's going to make a big difference in your career, in your business. Some of the things that I'm doing right now with Melissa's group is she does have 120 authors she's worked with. So we're working with each other to support each other in the book launch events. These are executives, pretty, impressive executives that she's working with. And if they have a workshop called questionnaring, I'm going to go to it. I'm going to pay for it, and I'm going to go to that, because you know why? The people I am going to meet are going to be of the caliber that will just naturally make a difference. I don't ruthlessly do this, but every time I go to something of substance, like something that she is running for one of her authors, there's always really great people that are highly influential, very well connected, and generous to a fault. It's about so much more than exchanging the business card. It really is about, how can I help you? Or I've got a podcast. I think your part would be really excellent with our particular content. That it's not just about mentorship. As we know it, the person who's 10 to 15 years older, who's imminently successful, it's not just about that. It's about so many different ways that we can be guided by others. It's the type of coaching we were talking earlier about. You can go online and pay for advice from people that you really admire. Melissa talked about that, about one of the authors but it's just for an hour. And if you just want to get coached topic, how great is it? You don't have to sign up for 10 hours. You can just go for 1 hour.
I think that's very important. And I think it's the idea of making yourself accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So my line is, know what you don't have to pay for, but know what you do have to pay for. And one of the greatest things you can have is getting some wisdom from a thought. So I have found those people that I greatly admire and always want to know, well, what does it cost? And, what is your coaching schedule? So I've changed the way I work. I've gone down to as few as 2 hours. I just feel I'd be doing somebody a disservice if I didn't give them 2 sessions, but I do 2 for 1. So, it's I think the way to go.
Right.
Sure.
Something that happened this morning, commercially active for SquareStack. I'm starting to works. And one, today I signed up with Built in Chicago, I'm sure you've heard of, where their whole business model now isn't, it's about realizing your own content in their community, about what your company does, where you're going, giving you a job listing yet. It's about first becoming part of the community. It's again, I think is how this networking mantra is infusing itself across a number of business models. And I'm a member of another group. It's the Association for Most Business Media Companies, Association of Publishing Companies. And as a member, you have access to a lot of of their people and their members. If you have a question about how do you publish something in X format, or what is the revenue model for this kind of product. So associations, whether they're are starting to understand that they've got to build a better community networking function, which your group does as well, right?
And the other thing
Right.
I think that I'd highly recommend for groups is to really identify people who are the ambassadors. Like even if there are a couple in a group that can be the go-to, that can say, "Oh, you'd want to meet so and so." It's really great to have that kind of help in a group. And one of the things I recommend when anybody, if they're coming into town, they're new, because a lot of people do move to Chicago, that they contact the people who are in a group and who are in charge.
I get a lot of those calls.
Yeah, I was going to say, and find out also who in the are those people who are natural networkers, and then go meet them, so that I have done a lot with the MIT forum. And the thing that always resonated with them is that they didn't have to go alone. I mean, you've got a lot of people who are very fearful, especially in the IT community.
Yes.
So setting up an infrastructure where they can get ushered in and supported is really helpful.
Making it personally accountable. That I found people expect, mentored in organizations and otherwise, for people to come to them. But the game really is there and asking for the help and engaging and helping others. It is about the self-directed development angle. You can't really expect others to do the work for you. It's about being out there in the lunches and the evenings. Yeah, it's about really taking that.
It is about taking responsibility, and it's also about really asking for what you want. If you don't ask, when I hosted the last conference that I did in November, challenged the people in the group to what you want, because minds. And when people started really asking, and I asked that question a lot, and I know it sounds very general. You want help in understanding a landscape for sales, if you're trying to understand what are some channel partners. These are the kinds of problems. The problems, you have to start pinpointing the problem in order to engage your feedback squad so that they're useful to you. So is there anything before we end? I just want to make sure that the audience knows that this is about Agile Career, and the website is .com. Other questions about scaling your organization, you can go to CEO. And people, Bill, how do people get in?
Yeah, so I'm here wearing multiple hats, like most serial entrepreneurs do. But certainly, if anyone's some quick insights about their own careers, specifically in digital media, I'd be happy to take an email, bill@squarestack.com. Just reference the show. And then you could go to squarestack.com if you're interested. You own a small business and you want to do a 90-day free trial of our platform. Be happy to have you check it out, kick the tires, see if it works for you. Again, that's all about Agile. And so, again, me. And, of course, through LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram even has some B2B applications now. So it's amazing how many of the new social platforms are a B2B component. But I'm fully loaded online.
How do people reach you?
I'm at networlding.com. I always say it's instead of networking, it's networlding, WORLD. And you can always just hit the contact page and reach out to me. And there are a lot of free resources on there for people who want to get into writing either an ebook or a book, and would love to have anybody be part of the community.
I may have to call you.
That's great. Well, again, this was, we want to thank our sponsors, Scene Chicago, for participating as our sponsor, and wanted to thank all of you today for being with me. Appreciate it. This is 50 Shades of Business, and thank you for tuning in.